I'm visiting my dad at the hospital today. He had a stroke a while back. And now he struggles with paralysis on his right side and has serious issues with swallowing. Although the paralysis has stabilized, there has been no significant improvement in his swallowing difficulties, causing repeated aspiration pneumonia. As a result, he now has a gastrostomy and resides in a nursing care facility. He sleeps most of the day, but sometimes wakes up and responds when spoken to. My dad, who used to be overweight, has lost a lot of weight and is in a fragile state. Today, my dad seems to be sleeping peacefully. I change his clothes and personal care items and look at his face. He loved cars, and when I was young, he often took me for drives. I also helped him take care of his car, and we have many memories together involving cars. I am Megan, 37 years old and currently working remotely. The reason is to make time to visit my dad. My mom passed away in an accident a few years ago, and I have a strong desire to be there for my dad in his final moments. My parents married late, and my mom had me at the age of 40. Perhaps because of that, they cherished me very much. I have a brother, Anthony, who is 38 years old. He works for a large company and is married. And he never visits our dad, citing his job and marriage as reasons. He occasionally calls, but it seems like he is just waiting for our dad to pass away. The conversations are always about inheritance, which makes me very angry. My dad is classified as requiring the highest level of care, so his medical expenses are almost non-existent. Still, we use his savings to buy necessities for his life. He left enough savings not to suffer financially, for which I am truly grateful. I am very thankful to the nurses and caregivers who look after him. Today is a nice day. I hold my sleeping dad's hand and talk to him. There is no response. Yet, this time is very precious to me. As usual, I talk about the memories I have with my dad as if talking to myself. After spending about an hour like this, I say, "I'll come again," and leave the room. Every day seems the same, but I feel the time to say goodbye is getting closer. Yet, I still believe that tomorrow will be another unchanging day. In the middle of the night, I receive a call from the nursing care facility saying that my dad is critically ill, and I rush to be by his side. It seems they also contacted Anthony, but he was not there when I arrived. "Dad, hold on," I desperately call out to him, but soon a beeping sound rings out. The doctor announces that my dad has passed away. I wanted him to live longer, and I cried in sadness. Tears kept flowing endlessly. I don't remember much after that. Feeling hollow, my aunt took care of various things for me. She seems to have contacted my brother, who is supposed to be the chief mourner. But he only responded, "I'll come if it's about the inheritance," and hung up. Instead, I took on the role of chief mourner. I only greeted the attendees, but I was told that I could barely stand after that. I hold my dad's portrait, forcing me to confront his death. After the funeral, I took paid leave from work to sort out my feelings. Every day, I talk to my mom's and dad's portraits. When my mom died out of the blue in an accident, I feel like my dad was going through what I'm feeling at this moment. After his stroke, he once murmured, "Honey." My parents had a very good relationship for many years, and I never saw them argue. They respected and cared for each other so much that it was embarrassing to watch. Although Anthony ridiculed our parents, I loved them very much. I wanted to have a marriage like theirs, but I couldn't have my wedding while they were alive. Instead, Anthony got married and had children, which I am grateful for. Suddenly, the month after my dad's death arrived, and after discussing with my aunt, we decided to hold a joint memorial service for my mom's 7th anniversary. It would make both of our parents happy, we agreed. Then, during the meal after the memorial service, Anthony and his wife suddenly showed up at the ceremony hall. I had sent them an invitation for the service, but showing up after it was over was just appalling. "I thought it's about time to talk about the inheritance," he said loudly, laughing. "There are still guests here, so let's talk about this later." I tried to reason with my brother. However, he wouldn't listen and continued. "No, I've already decided. I, being the eldest son, will take all of Dad's inheritance. It's only natural, right?" What he was saying was outrageous. "What are you talking about?" I raised my voice involuntarily. "I'll take the house, so you should leave." The attendees began to murmur, not wanting to expose more of our family's disgrace. I said, "Anyway, let's talk about this later," and drove Anthony and his wife out of the room. After seeing off the guests, I returned home and talked with Anthony and his wife in the room again. "You didn't even come to the wake or the funeral. Yet you have the nerve to say you'll take everything?" After I said my prayers by the portraits, I brought up the topic with my brother, Anthony. Of course, Anthony and his wife didn't join in the prayer. There's no way I'd attend such a boring thing. I'm busy, you know. Unlike you lounging around at home, I have a lot to do at a major corporation. Couldn't your wife have at least helped out? I couldn't help but glare at my sister-in-law. I thought it was useless to say anything to someone who doesn't understand common sense, but I was utterly appalled by her selfish attitude. "No way, don't make your sister-in-law mingle with strangers, that's like harassment." My sister-in-law laughed softly as she responded, "I think it's common sense, though. Birds of a feather flock together." I thought they were well matched in their senselessness. More importantly, it's about inheritance. With that said by Anthony, I brought out the bankbook I had been entrusted with by our dad. Anthony snatched the bankbook and checked the balance. "What's this? Is this all? Have you been dipping into it?" He seemed irritated that the balance was lower than expected. "That's not the case at all. I've only used what's necessary for hospital expenses." I laid the household account book on the table. It was a proper proof with receipts attached. Anthony clicked his tongue. "Well, then, it's about the personal effects. I'm taking anything that looks valuable." He looked around the room. "Don't be selfish. There are things among the personal effects that are important to me too. Sentiment? That can't compare to money." Ignoring my protests, Anthony started rummaging through the room. "What an ugly sight. A portion of what you inherit is set by law." When I said this, Anthony paused for a moment, then said, "Then, I'll give you that old car for your share." "What?" I was surprised by his unexpected words. "That old car is good enough for you." "Is that true?" "Yes," he laughed. Anthony knew that I didn't want to part with our dad's car at any cost. After all, it held the most memories of me and our dad. As long as I had our dad's car, I wasn't particularly attached to anything else. So I signed the inheritance division agreement and decided to move out promptly. Satisfied with my signature, Anthony started searching the room again. My dad loved this so-called junk car. On days off, we often washed it together. I remember how beautiful the rainbows created by the water were, as I stretched to wash places I couldn't easily reach. My dad would drive my mom in the passenger seat and me and Anthony in the back seat to the coast or scenic spots. I loved watching my dad drive, and when I told my mom, she happily said, "Me too." It seems that my dad proposed to her in this car. To say that our family's history is packed into this car would not be an exaggeration. Then I opened the glove compartment, which held another important item. Inside were a bank book and a deed of gift in my name. Father, having worked in a tax office until his stroke, had been gradually transferring his assets to me since our mom's death, foreseeing that Anthony was eyeing his inheritance. That's why he managed everything so that no gift tax would apply. And there were no tax issues. Although Anthony had landed a job at a major company, he squandered all his salary and had apparently been pestering our dad for money when it ran out. Despite looking down on me as the bottom tier, what a brother he was. Unlike him, I worked at a solid used car dealership. Not a major corporation, but as an office worker. This job was a vocation for me, influenced by my love for cars from my dad. What Anthony has left is just the money in his living expense account and that house. But since it's on a fixed lease, he'll have to either pay to keep it or take it apart when the lease runs out. I wonder what he will do. I kept silent, but a year later, he finally seemed to have noticed and contacted me. "Hey, isn't this house Dad's?" Anthony yelled over the phone. The house was indeed Dad's, but the land is more or less rented. So, you only need to pay the tax for the house part. It seems it's time for the contract renewal. I think Dad was very thoughtful about his future when he built the house. I didn't hear about that. Anthony panicked over the phone. But, Anthony, you never used to talk to Mom and Dad. You ridiculed them for being close and loving, calling it silly. It's all your fault. I remember when our parents were still healthy. Even when we were out as a family, Anthony would just play on his mobile phone in the car. I saw the sadness on our dad's face when Anthony barely responded to him. Despite all the love our parents gave us, it seemed it never reached Anthony. Why did he grow up this way, despite having the same parents? It makes me feel so disappointed. So what should I do now? The renewal period for the home contract is approaching, and he is very anxious. Well, you have to apply within 3 months to disclaim an inheritance. So it's too late now. So, you either have to pay the land renewal fee or pay the demolition costs to vacate. I only inherited the car, so the house has nothing to do with me. I took a very cold and calm attitude. Did you know and deceive me? Deceive you? That's outrageous. I said I only inherited the car because that's what Anthony wanted. I just followed it. Yes, I never insisted on anything about inheritance. Anthony made all the commands. That's right. The car. I've been researching it ever since. It seems like an amazing car. Anthony had thought our dad's car was just an old clunker with no value. But now that he understood its true value, he seemed eager to make some money from it. Ah, you finally noticed. Anthony, who always drives the latest cars, couldn't see its value. It's a classic car. It's a 1970 GTR two-door hardtop. It has very specific details like the emblem and the rear over fenders. It also has custom modifications made by our dad himself. A testament to the hard work he put in when he was young to buy it. I respected our dad, which is why I wanted that car so much. It's really good that Anthony, who likes new things, didn't understand the value of that car. No matter how much I explained, Anthony, who is not knowledgeable about cars, probably wouldn't understand. As if to clear up past grievances, I deliberately used technical terms to explain it in a way that Anthony wouldn't understand. Sell that car and turn it into money. Then give me that money. Enough. I interrupted Anthony's words. Don't involve me anymore. I plan to gradually maintain the car at my workplace. It's too old for ordinary repair shops to handle, so the repairs will be very costly. That's why I'll fix it myself. Can you do that, Anthony? With that, Anthony fell silent. But at least lend me some money. Why should I? Haven't you always bragged about your high income? From working at a big corporation? I mentioned that I knew Anthony had been begging our dad for money. Anthony had nothing to say. You live beyond your means because you like to spend freely. So now you don't have money for living expenses. I heard Anthony grunt. I know you've been gambling lately. If you know, then lend me some. There's no way someone would lend money that won't come back to a person they have no relation with. I'm changing this phone number too, so don't call me anymore. Bye, I said and hung up the phone. I felt truly refreshed. Since then, Anthony, trying to rely on relatives but ignored by everyone since the month memorial service, had no choice but to resort to loan sharks. He eventually became sidelined at work because of repeated delays in debt payments and the collection calls that reached his workplace. Naturally, his income decreased significantly, and he continued to default, leading a downhill life as he rolled from one shady lender to another. Eventually, unable to withstand the rumors within the company, Anthony resigned and did a midnight flit to escape from the debt collectors. With Anthony no longer pestering me for funds, I found some calm in my life, both mentally and physically. Going forward, I'm eager to restore the car that our dad left behind.